Welcome to the Starzology Astrology Podcast. I am your host, Alison Price, and I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Arwynne O'Neill.
Hello, Alison. It's great to be here again.
Thank you so much for being here once more. So in this episode, we've decided we're going to be talking about forecasting books.
Yeah.
We have recently put out a podcast about basic natal books, but this time we're going to be talking about forecasting, which seems to be the next progression that people get to. Once you can kind of cast a natal chart, you're going to want to say, well, and what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
So forecasting, call it what you will, predicting.
Yeah.
So we're going to be we've each got 5 forecasting books we're going to be recommending, and we don't know who's brought what, so it's going to be interesting there as well.
The reveal.
The big reveal, as they say. And so let's get straight into it.
Yeah.
So, Arwynne, what is your first forecasting book that you are recommending to someone who can actually do a chart and now wants to do some forecasting?
Absolutely. Well, this is going to come as no surprise to anyone, including yourself, but it is Planets in Transit by Robert Hand.
Fantastic book.
Yes, it is the Bible of transits. And it is, I've got Post-it notes in here. I've got pencil marks. I refer to this almost every single time I do one of my aspect and transit episodes on Wednesdays. And yeah, it's got it all.
And what is it about his particular transit book that you find?
It is a cookbook, and it goes into detail about every distinct aspect that you could possibly want. So Sun opposition Pluto, Sun square midheaven, Mars in the 12th house, Jupiter in the 8th house, literally all the planets through all of the houses.
For transits.
And through, and all the aspects that it may make in transit to your chart.
This is amazing.
Yes.
So if you've got, say, Uranus is squaring your sun, you would look in this book and you would find... Yes.
Exactly. A wonderfully descriptive and useful...
Yes.
Exactly. So did you say transiting sun? So let's say sun trine Uranus. It's telling you that it's an excellent time to engage in new activities, to make discoveries, and it's good for studying any discipline that can reveal new and stimulating aspects of the universe, et cetera, et cetera. So these are, and it's got like a good 4 paragraphs about each thing.
Yes.
If not more.
Yes.
So it's nice. It's a thick, huge book, and it gives you like a really good, meaty description, as they say, of each and every possible transit that you could.
I totally agree with you. I think Planet in Transit by Robert Hand should be on every astrologer's shelf, especially because you'll start with your forecasting with transits, and this really has to be the go-to book. Yeah. Now, many astrologers stop at transits. Yeah. They don't go anywhere else, but this is fine. Yeah. But this is still, I think, the best transit book there is out there. Yeah, and it's been around a while, but I can see your book is, I want to say, well-loved.
Well-loved, exactly. It is. Well-loved and used.
It's a fabulous book. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So what is your first book?
So the first book I'm recommending for forecasting is a rather slim volume.
It is.
It is. It's Solar Arc Directions by Frank C. Clifford.
Okay.
Now, Solar Arc Directions is one of the indirect forecasting methods which I use, and any good astrologer would use, and why wouldn't you? So this is a particularly slim one, but he covers everything you need to know. I do believe that more could have been said in this book, but he very kindly wrote me on the flyleaf when I was there, because I happened to pick it up when I was with him anyway. He wrote me a nice things with best wishes to Alison, which is lovely. So why wouldn't I? What a kind man he is.
Yeah.
So this is a brief introduction to Solar Arc Directions, which is when you move the whole chart forward the same degree as the progress sun. We'll talk about that in another episode, but it's pretty straightforward, and it's explaining the principle of Solar Arc Directions, because you might be thinking, oh, that's a whole nother chart I've got to interpret. And yes, it can be, but the trick is knowing what to look at and what's important. So whilst it's a very slim, and I want to say slim, it's less than 100 pages, but it's actually got the meat here. And if you read this and you thought, that's interesting, then you could go deeper. Yeah. But to start with, it's not for everyone, but it's the Solar Arc Directions by Frank C. Clifford.
Nice.
Okay, Arwynne, so which is your second forecasting book you'd like to share with us?
So my second book is called Astrology, Karma, and Transformation by Stephen Arroyo, The Inner Dimensions of the Birth Chart. And at first, this might not seem like a forecasting book, but it actually talks a lot about transits and progressions, and it talks about Saturn's transit. So he goes into the Saturn return and the different stations that it makes, the Saturn square, and et cetera. It talks about Neptune conjunctions and
is it transits?
It's transits, yeah,
okay.
And it kind of is all over the place a little bit in its descriptions of things. It's it talks a bit about placements in the birth chart, but then it also talks about transits.
Okay.
It's about basically just karma, and it talks a bit about reincarnation and that kind of thing. So it's evolutionary astrology a bit, and it is Stephen Arroyo, so it's very much like storytelling kind of, and
right.
very conversational. But he talks about the cycles of transformation and your kind of like stages of life. He talks about the midlife crisis and
which comes through transits. Let's face it.
Exactly. I mean, the Saturn return. What is that if not the crisis we all have as we become adults? And then the second one is the midlife crisis for sure.
Absolutely.
And the Uranus return and all that.
Yeah.
So
it's a great book. I too have it because, of course, it's our favourite author, St. Stephen.
Absolutely.
And we love his writing.
We really do.
It's a good, solid book. It really is.
Yeah. And just a little snippets in here about like Pluto transits and, different things that it might do to you. And, I found it really poignant when I was first learning astrology to sort of look through when did I have, Pluto crossing my ascendant, which actually happened when I was like 11, I think. And it was rough.
Wow.
I went through a very difficult phase in middle school, and he talks about that. It's like, this is the crisis of personality. This is when you doubt yourself, when it seems like everyone's looking at you. And maybe everyone feels that way when they're 11 or 12, that everyone's looking at them. But I remember feeling so seen, I guess is what they would say these days. But yeah, it's a great book, and it really ties it in. It's not the kind of thing where it's just a cookbook where you can say, oh, the transit of this and that. It's more, it talks about like the background of it and why is this important.
Mm-hmm. I think that I too have this book, and I do believe it's one of those books where you actually read it and you've actually got something to think about afterwards.
Yeah.
When you're in the show, you're thinking, is that what that paragraph meant? And then you go back and read it again.
Yeah.
So it's a deeper book.
It is deeper.
But it's definitely an excellent book.
Absolutely not a cookbook. Definitely the kind of book that you want to take. I want to say if you're taking a vacation or a staycation where you're going to have a lot of time by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're digging deep. Yeah. That is a solid astrology book.
Yeah.
Excellent recommendation.
Thank you. All right. What have you got up next?
So the next book I'm recommending for forecasting is Planets in Solar Returns, a yearly guide for transformation and growth by Mary Scher.
Ah, nice.
Now, this is a solar returns book, and it's probably, there are others, but it's definitely my go-to book. And as Arwynne can attest, the back is actually totally come off and the whole thing's in pieces.
It looks like just a bunch of pamphlets.
But I'm holding the whole thing together because I still reference this book when I'm working with solar returns, because she is solid with her solar return information, not only the cookbook of it, but the actual how the cycles show through, how the sun moves through, how the moon moves through each of your 12 solar returns ahead. And it's so once you've learned your transits and you're going on to solar returns, I recommend this book. It's a great book. It shows you also what to focus on and what not to focus on. Because, again, this is one of those, I've got another chart I've got to read. Well, yes, you do. It's the solar return chart.
Yeah.
But you're looking for different things, and that's why it's important to understand what solar returns are and not just tap them out in your phone or something like that.
Absolutely, and it changes every year, so that's the
every year, every time you have a birthday, you've got a new solar return chart, so you've got to get the book out and say, where's my sun now? Where's my moon now? What's going on now?
Right.
And
do I need to travel for next birthday? So
there
my
you
sun's
go.
not in the 12th house or whatever.
Exactly. So this is an excellent book, and I use it all the time. Yeah. And what can I say? It just came apart.
Nice.
But it's a great book.
Yeah, amazing.
Okay, Arwynne, so what's your third forecasting book you've got for us today?
Okay, I've got The Changing Sky, A Practical Guide to Predictive Astrology by Stephen Forrest.
Okay.
Yeah, and in this book he talks about transits, progressions, the cycle of the houses, the progressed moon. These are very specific sections of it. And then progressed planets. So he goes through all of the major planets that could be progressed. And then he gives a bunch of great examples. He talks about Vincent van Gogh as an example
Right.
of kind of a sad but wonderful tale. It's
Yes.
called The Artist, Evangelist, and Madman. And yeah, it's just obviously anything by Stephen Forrest is going to be a wonderful read and going to have a lot of
Well
wonderful
written,
nuggets of
up to date.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, it goes into a great deal of detail too. It could be thought of almost as a cookbook in some chapters,
Right.
because it's like progressed moon in Capricorn. And then there's a whole, half page
Yes.
about it.
Yes.
The progressed moon in Pisces, the progressed sun, natal conjoined with natal Pluto. So it goes through a lot of
Important ones,
important details and in a sort of a cookbook fashion in the second half of it. But then, yeah.
Yes. So this is, it's leaning heavily towards progressions.
It transits and progressions, both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
that's
but then
great.
he talks about how to synthesize them together, which is great because
Yes.
a lot of people would never think about synthesizing them.
Yes.
But yeah, it's almost like he's talking partially to the student of astrology, but then also to someone who might become an astrologer.
Right.
So it's actually kind of, it's one of those books where you can feel him kind of straddling the line between, consulting versus just the student.
Interpreting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Excellent.
It's great. He's a wonderful teacher.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right. What have you got up next for you?
So my third forecasting book I'm recommending is Predictive Astrology, The Eagle and the Lark by Bernadette Brady.
Nice.
Now, this is one of those books that when I read it, I thought, oh, I couldn't believe what I was reading. It was an eye-opener. She takes a different view on astrology in a way that she has a whole different look into it, but it's talking basically about prediction, obviously predictive astrology. So it's not just transits; it's definitely progressions as well. And she has a different approach to it, a more scientific approach, where you're writing a little table and you're adding your bits and bobs in here and so on. So she does talk about returns as well. So she's talking about transits and progressions in here. Time maps, she has a little bit on time maps, but she's solid here on eclipses, which I'll come to again in a moment.
Nice.
And this is the book where she's got the Saros cycles that the astrologers use, and I don't know where else to get these from because they're different to the NASA ones. So this is where you're looking at your prenatal eclipses and your eclipses. We're going to be doing a podcast on that soon.
Cool.
But you've got to get your brain engaged when you're reading this book. This is not some light bedtime reading. You've got to be saying, let me take a note of that. And let me take a note of that. And
you have. There's
I have
post-it notes.
I have taken notes of this, yes. And I do recommend this highly to my students as well because she's solid on transits, progressions, and then eclipses. So that's an interesting combination.
Definitely.
Yeah. So that is Predictive Astrology, The Eagle and the Lark by Bernadette Brady.
Very good. Nice.
All right, moving on. So what's our next forecasting book, Arwynne?
Right. So my fourth book is Prediction in Astrology, a master volume of technique and practice by Noel Till. Yes. And he is a brilliant astrologer who has written an amazing collection of books, but this one is about prediction. So he talks about great predictions in history, rectification. Solar arc theory and transits, mundane astrology, and different world crises in history, which is fascinating to me. He talks about counseling, like how you counsel other people if you are a counseling astrologer in your practice. And he talks about professional solar arc analysis. He goes into all the different things.
He's digging into all sorts. There's
it's definitely, it covers a lot of bases. And of course, great historical examples of people's charts. So there are some sort of anonymous examples, but then obviously celebrities and people in history who are super important. Kings and,
So he's talking about transits and progressions in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're two solid forecasting techniques, aren't they? They really are. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. Not a beginner book.
No. Forecasting isn't beginner. No, it isn't.
No. All right. So what's your fifth book?
Well, my fourth book is my fourth book, thanks for asking, is Eclipses, Predicting World Events and Personal Transformation by Celeste Teal.
Nice.
Special topics in astrology. So this book is part of a series. They I don't know, the publishers all got together and got some astrologers together. But this is quite a modern book. I think it was only written 15 years ago. And she's particularly talking about eclipses, which is a super interesting topic once you get into it. To start with, you skim over, you think, eclipses. But once you get into it, it's like, whoa, really?
Yeah.
And that's all going on. And I've got a note here, bought June 2012. So there you have it. And she's talking here, of course, about solar eclipses, lunar eclipses, and she does dig a bit into the Saros cycles as well, and how to cast eclipse charts, the interpretation of them, because, of course, we get at least 4 eclipses each year, so it's kind of interesting. And if you're a forecasting astrologer, you're going to need to know when the eclipses are. It's not just you just know, there's one on April the 8th. You've still got to know more than that, right?
Yeah, totally.
So I like it because I do like eclipses as a topic.
Yeah.
And it's well written. The words are big enough and they're not all crammed on the page. Again, because it's a modern book, it's laid out well.
Yeah.
So that's what I like. So I'm recommending that one. So that's Eclipses by Celeste Teal.
Excellent.
So, Arwynne, what's your next book then?
All right. My final book is called Cosmic Trends, Astrology Connects the Dots by Philip Brown. And this is also a newer book, by which I mean, I think it came out in maybe 2006.
Okay.
It's one of my newest books, which is hilarious. But, compared to like 70s and 80s. And the description of it on the back says, it's a provocative and fun guide to the connection between cosmic patterns and pop culture, which is so up my alley. It talks about the history of different transits and different progressions, or not progressions, but different, basically like the generations of Pluto, the different major aspects that Pluto and, like, let's say Pluto and Saturn would make, and what are the synodic cycles? Yeah, and what are the the trends that occur with these types of things? And he actually has like activities that you can do. So little like fun bubbles that you can kind of write, like what are extreme is one of the keywords to Pluto conjunctions with I think Saturn. I'm just flipping through the pages here. But, so what goes with that? It's like extreme sports, extreme. Everything was extreme in the 90s, right? Like when Pluto went through Sagittarius.
Yes.
So Pluto in Sagittarius is all about like religion and spirit and like extreme sports and extreme everything. And when Pluto was in Scorpio, we had like AIDS awareness and
well, that's when it came up, right?
The whole goth movement and people wearing all black and like he just goes through all of these. It's not exactly forecasting, so I'm maybe stretching the definition of our book topics here a little. But for me, it's fascinating because for me, I love looking at the larger cycles of things, and they do actually impact human life.
Well, I think this is important because even though we talk about transits, blah blah blah. If you're looking at trends, you're going to be looking at transits anyway.
Exactly.
So if you're doing, say, horoscopes or whatever it is for next January or something, you're going to be looking at these trends. That is what you're talking about.
That's right. Exactly right. And
the bigger picture trends.
Exactly. The bigger picture trends. He talks about like Pluto through all the different signs that it's been in recently. And then, of course, he wasn't obviously privy to what would happen when Pluto went into Aquarius, but he does, have some predictions. And it's really fascinating to actually even look back and see, like, because this was published right before Pluto went into Capricorn. So what did he predict? And he predicted the world will be networked like never before. Philanthropy and compassion will make a comeback. Restraint will be a key to the coming age. Well, that's interesting. Television shows and movies will center around many themes of death and dying. Yes. Loneliness of an aging population will make itself felt. Yes. In-your-face comedians, etc.
It's interesting. So he's looking at the broader picture, which shows,
and Neptune and its association with fashion and glamour, and so the fashion trends that go along with Neptune, and when it goes into a different sign, like what are the fashions of like different cars, Neptune and disco, when it was, interesting, and he has these little sidebars, so it's very readable in like just a sort of a bite-sized thing. He has little celebrity examples. He talks about Uranus going through different. I leaned heavily on this book actually when I did my presentations on fashion and the generations. That was one of my resources.
That's a great. So what was the name again?
Yes, Cosmic Trends, Astrology Connects the Dots by Philip Brown.
Fantastic.
Yeah, a more recent example. And what is your final book?
So the final book I'm suggesting for forecasting is Llewellyn's complete book of predictive astrology,
Ooh.
The Easy Way to Predict Your Future by Chris Brandt, Risk M.A.
Wow.
So
is it easy?
Well, he says it is. So this is a book that gives a broad overview of forecasting. So it talks about transits, progressions, solar directions, and everything in it. It does move at quite a lick, so you do need to know your stuff before you get into it. But it's pretty solid. They've got, the moon go through the signs and the progress moon and stuff like that. So once more, it's a book that's cookbooky.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know. I think it was written probably 25 years ago. So it's still pretty straightforward. And they're pulling charts there from Solar Fire, Marilyn Monroe. You can tell how old these books are, by the way.
Oh, everyone uses
the
her
charts.
as an example.
Yeah.
Between that and Charles and Princess Di, right?
Exactly. Who do we have? But it's also giving ideas about counselling at the back when you're actually doing astrology readings about how to couch these predictions and
nice.
And there's some tips about divorce coming up and this and that. I mean, I know.
Don't predict someone's death.
I know. Don't go there. So I would say that this is a book that is. It's a general forecasting book. It's not a specific one, and it would be, if you only bought one book, this would be a good one to get because it kind of covers everything.
Yeah.
It says here, Your Ultimate Guide to Predictive Astrology.
Nice.
So it's an okay book, and I think if you're dabbling your toe into forecasting, this will be a good book to go.
Nice.
Yeah.
A book with a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything, yeah. Not too intense, but if you knew everything in there, you'd know a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
Nice.
So we have looked at a lot of books that we're recommending. So, Arwynne, when did you start building your astrology book shelf?
Oh, gosh. I really started collecting books in probably 2000.
Okay.
Maybe 1999, 2000. I had recently moved in with my partner at that time, and I was starting to get back into astrology because I had been super into it when I was in my teens. And then I guess You
rediscovered it or something?
I rediscovered it for sure. And it might have been even just working for an internet company and having access to the internet all of a sudden. And all of a sudden I found this site, I think it was astrocenter.com back in the day, where you could do chart calculations for free. And they had these incredibly detailed, long since gone, but these wonderful, 12-page interpretations.
Right.
And I printed them out for everyone I knew. Nice. And at work, on the work printer, of course, right? And I brought them home, and I was like, here, and I was reading all these things out loud to my friends and family, and they were like, wow, that's amazing. And then I got super into it again. Mm-hmm. And then I started getting, collecting books and going to used bookstores and just literally scooping up, I would go to a used bookstore, go to the astrology section, which is usually pretty small. It's like a shelf, usually, in a used bookstore. Yeah. And I would, scoop up, 5 or 6 books at a time. We're talking less than $10 each, right? So that's a great haul. Did I read them all? No. I read a lot of them, and I highlighted everything that I found relevant, stuck little Post-it notes in them, read them out loud to friends and family, and really just absorbed a lot of information. And I got book recommendations from my mother and grandmother, who were so obviously super into astrology as well. That's how I got into it. And they recommended Stephen Arroyo. That was where I got that first recommendation. And I couldn't actually find any of his books because, of course, they're just super popular. And I think a couple of them were out of print. Maybe that might not be true. But they actually sent me their versions of them. And I read them and then sent them back and then bought my own copies when I found them, which is hilarious. The actual analog mailing of books to and from each other.
So how would you say your astrology bookcase looks today?
Well, it is massive. I have hundreds of books. I don't think I have thousands. It's very possible that I have upwards of 500 books. And they are organized by color. Right, right. And it's not just because that's a fashion choice. I actually think of them that way. So when I'm remembering a book in my head, I remember the cover. I go, that was a white book.
So you're not doing the duodecimal system in your house?
Hell no.
No. Why would you? Yeah.
Exactly. And a little bit by size, but mostly by color.
And are you adding to it all the time? Every year there's a couple more slide onto the shelf?
Honestly, lately I really do listen to more audiobooks than regular books. And I have slowed down a bit only because, I can't think of what I would do once that bookcase fills up. It's an entire wall in our apartment.
I know.
So at this point, it's more like, can I give this book away? Have I read this one recently? Would this be of value to somebody else?
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to more astrology books being available on audio, to be honest. Like that's one of the, I'm not going to say the name of it, but I did recently find an audiobook on my library app, which is called Libby, and it's the library, borrowing app. And it's an audiobook. It's a new audiobook, very new, written by a very young person. And I'm not enjoying it, but I wanted to read it because it's someone new coming to astrology, and she's quite a bit younger than us. She's clearly like either just graduated from college or maybe even still in college, judging by her writing style.
Right.
It's very academic. It's very, can I say, woke?
Okay.
It's weird. It's a weird. I'm not going to throw her under the bus or anything, but I'm interested in reading more. New finders of astrology, new minds who are thinking that it's something of value. Yeah, exactly. And this, I don't think, is one of them. That's why I'm not pitching the name of it. But it's interesting nonetheless to me. And she did say one thing in the intro to the book, which was that that people come to astrology for different reasons. But one of the main things that's great about it, regardless of what their age is or what their pursuit in life, blah blah blah, is that she can walk into a room and find any number of cohort of people, and then they'll be like, oh, I have Neptune in blah blah blah, this is why such and such, or I have Mercury retrograde right now, and blah blah blah, and that unifies people. And that's one of the great things about astrology, is that regardless of your walk of life or your generation or whatever, you can find common ground with people, and it's a way of talking about yourself that is separate from your ego, but yet at the same time it unifies. It's a common ground, and it's a common language, which I love. So, yeah. How about you?
It's great. Yeah. I started collecting my astrology books. It would have been 1980, thinking about it. But back then in Johannesburg, you couldn't get astrology books. It's a strongly Christian country. Oh. All the shops are closed on a Sunday, blah, blah, blah. And you really couldn't get them. So if you saw something, you snapped it up. Yeah. And then as things changed and the politics changed, things lightened up and books started coming in. And I would if a book came in, I would devour it because there was not that much.
Right.
And I slowly grew my bookshelf and bookshelf and bookshelf to this monster bookshelf. And then finally, when we were in Cape Town and we finally decided we were going to emigrate to Canada, of course, my husband said, we're not taking all that lot with us. I'm not paying for that lot to go there. And it was this pile on the table of these astrology books, and I had to sell them as a job lot to some woman.
Wow.
And I said, I think it was over 1,000 books by that stage because I'd just kept them.
Yeah.
And some were diaries and whatnot, or what's the word? There's ephemeris for the year and things like that. Yeah. I had all those and stuff like that. Right. And I sold them to this one woman job lot, and she couldn't get them in her car. There were so many. Wow. But she paid me for those. And I said, well, when I get to Canada, you do realize I'm buying all these books again. And which I did.
Yeah.
And slowly I've bought them since we've been here, 20 odd years, I've bought them. So I've now got, my bookshelf isn't as big as yours. So I've actually got 4 bookshelves, 1, 2, 3. But my main bookshelf is actually in my office, where the go-to books are actually kept that I'm reaching for. These bookshelves out here are more, if I'm looking for something specifically, like when I was doing the fixed stars thing the other week, I would come and say, where are my fixed stars books? But I sort mine by topic.
Yes, that makes sense.
So I've got all my transits together, all my fixed stars together, all my bits and bobs together.
That would have made this study for this topic easier, but
I know. Whatever. But I still purchase books, but I'm more particular now. Because, of course, you can't buy them in a bookshop here in Vancouver. You've got to go, basically, I order them from Amazon.
Yeah.
And I tend more to follow authors rather than titles.
Yeah.
So I like Bernadette Brady's and I like Nick Campion. When they write books, I buy them, even if I'm thinking, gosh, this is complicated. But I will still go there because they are I want to call them thought leaders in astrology. That's why
Yeah.
I like them.
I-
So I'm not going to buy a lightweight, ho, ho, ho.
Yeah.
This is how you learn astrology book anymore, obviously. But
I have a ton of those, though. It's funny. From when I was first collecting, I didn't know what I wanted.
exactly. So you
Yeah.
start off buying a load of books, you think, well, that wasn't much good.
Yeah. I literally have one that says it's called, I think its actual title is The Only Astrology Book You'll Ever Need. What? Why
Of course
would
it isn't, because you're going
No,
to prop
I
up the
would never
table.
have that.
No.
you- But it's funny that doing the research for this episode and our previous one, I really did find a couple of books that I'd forgotten I even had. And I was like, oh my God, it's way up there with the other orange books, and I just forgot I had it.
Well, this is it, because by the time you get to our level, you're buying planet-specific books. You're buying a Mars book, a Pluto book, a
Yeah.
Jupiter book, the Nodes book.
I have all those, yeah.
You can't just have half a page in some other book. You
Oh,
need
God.
the actual Nodes book
I have
with
so
a
many
deep,
notes books, yeah.
with the Vertex book or whatever it
Yeah.
is. So in that way, what you're purchasing changes, because you're not buying those entry-level books
Yeah.
anymore. You're looking more for specific books, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's how the bookshelf, but it still grows.
Yeah.
I mean, I've still got Linda Goodman's over there, and I was considering. I thought, no, and her poetry and whatnot, and I'll keep it because,
Yeah.
but I don't ever read it.
No, every once in a while I don't open love signs anymore, but it is fun. It is fun. It was my first astrology book.
Yeah.
We've got a shout out. I mean, we can't go
Yeah,
do an entire book episode without mentioning Linda Goodman, the old
yeah, and there's a
foot in the
great,
door.
there's a great book over there, a Uranus graphic book by also a Canadian astrologer. Sorry, his name slips by me at the moment, but interesting book. But it's not what I'm leaning into.
Right.
So, but it's nice to have it, and I've read it, and all the books I've read, as I'm sure you've read all your books, right?
No, not at all. Some
Oh,
of them
no.
I just bought and never even cracked open, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing you can do when you get them at used bookstores. If it's, you paid $8 for it.
You're gonna, yeah. No, it's great. So, yeah, I think everyone who starts with astrology, by the time you've got 5 books, you're into it,
Yeah.
and there's no end. There's no
Yeah.
end. That's all I'm saying to the listeners, is that don't feel that if you've got 25 books, you've got too many.
Oh my God, no.
No, you
No.
Arwynne's Arwynne's bookshelf. She's got 1,000 astrology books and counting.
And I have not read them all. And I live in Vancouver, where real
Yeah.
estate's at a premium. So don't feel guilty about books,
Yeah.
if anything. Yeah, that's the takeaway. Never apologize for how many books you have.
Okay, so we've been chatting about the 10 forecasting books we'd recommend you get, because these are solid books that we use as practicing astrologers. And to our listeners, if you found value in this episode, please do consider sharing it with somebody who would be interested. And you can email us at starzology@gmail.com or visit our website at starzology.com. So I'd like to thank you again, Arwynne, for coming in and sharing your book recommendations with us.
Thank you, Alison. This has been super fun.
Thank you. Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the 2 main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer, or someone who's learning astrology, or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.